there is a reason you paused here. Not because someone forced you to. Not because you had nothing else to do. Out of countless moments, distractions, and decisions that could have filled your attention, something within you chose to stop. Most people believe that every encounter is random, that every message is simply another piece of information floating through an endless stream of noise. Yet the deeper you observe your own life, the harder it becomes to believe that everything meaningful is an accident. Think back for a moment. Have you ever met someone at precisely the time you needed a different perspective? Have you ever opened a book, heard a sentence, or noticed a simple symbol that seemed to answer a question you had never spoken aloud? These moments often feel impossible to explain with logic alone. They arrive quietly, without announcing themselves, but afterward you realize they marked the beginning of a completely different chapter. The mind has a remarkable way of recognizing meaning long before the conscious self understands it. Deep within you, there is a part that has been watching your experiences, collecting emotions, remembering forgotten dreams, and connecting patterns you cannot yet see. While your conscious thoughts focus on daily responsibilities, another level of awareness patiently waits for the right moment to bring something important into your life. That is why some messages pass by unnoticed, while others stop you completely. The difference is not in the message itself. The difference is in who you have become. Perhaps 6 months ago, these same words would have meant nothing. A year ago, you might have dismissed them, without a second thought. But life has been quietly shaping you through every disappointment, every unanswered question, every unexpected delay, and every silent struggle. Experiences that once felt meaningless have slowly prepared your inner world to recognize something it was previously unable to understand. Growth rarely announces itself with celebration. More often, it begins with confusion. There comes a period when familiar routines no longer satisfy you. Conversations that once entertained, you begin to feel empty. Goals that once seemed important lose their emotional weight. You may even wonder why everything feels strangely different when nothing around you appears to have changed. The truth is that the greatest changes usually happen long before they become visible. A seed spends weeks hidden beneath the soil before anyone sees the first sign of life. During that invisible period, it is not inactive. It is developing roots strong enough to support what will eventually rise above the surface. Human transformation follows the same principle. Before your outer life changes, your inner foundation begins reorganizing itself. Many people become frightened during this stage because they mistake inner uncertainty for failure. They assume they are lost simply because the old version of themselves no longer feels comfortable. But discomfort is often evidence that the mind is creating space for a larger understanding. Life has an extraordinary way of placing certain experiences before you, exactly when your perception has matured enough to receive them. What once appeared ordinary suddenly carries profound meaning. A conversation reveals an answer you have been seeking. A memory suddenly makes sense. A challenge you once resented begins to look like preparation instead of punishment. This shift does not happen because reality has changed overnight. It happens because you have. There is a quiet intelligence within every human being that constantly searches for coherence between inner truth and outer experience. When these begin to align, Meaningful moments appear with surprising frequency. You notice repeating themes. Certain ideas keep returning. Similar lessons arrive through different people. It almost feels as though life itself is speaking a language you are only now beginning to understand. Most people ignore these moments because they rush to explain them away. They reduce everything to coincidence and continue living exactly as before. But those who learn to pay attention discover that meaningful change often begins with a single moment of recognition. Recognition is powerful because it changes perception. And perception changes behavior. Behavior changes direction. Direct changes destiny. The transformation you seek rarely begins with a miracle outside yourself. It begins with a new way of seeing what has been present all along. Once your perception changes, opportunities you once overlooked become obvious. Strength you believed you lacked begins to emerge naturally. Decisions that once felt impossible become surprisingly clear. This is why timing matters so deeply. Wisdom cannot be forced upon a mind that is not prepared to receive it. The same truth, spoken at different moments, can produce entirely different lives. Today, something inside you may finally be ready to hear what your heart has been whispering for much longer than you realized. So do not rush past this moment. Sit with it. Let it challenge you. Let it awaken questions instead of demanding immediate answers. Some moments deserve reflection more than reaction, because they become the quiet turning points that divide who you were from who you are becoming. Perhaps the greatest change in your life does not begin with a dramatic event. Perhaps it begins the moment you finally recognize the meaning that has been patiently waiting for you all along. If this moment truly marks the beginning of change, then the next question is not what is happening around you. It is what has been happening within you all this time. Most people spend their lives searching for answers in the outside world, believing that a new opportunity, a new relationship, or a new circumstance will finally bring the peace they have been chasing. Yet the deepest transformations rarely begin with external events. They begin when you encounter the part of yourself you have spent years avoiding. Every person carries two versions of themselves. There is the one presented to the world, the capable, agreeable, confident, or successful identity carefully shaped over time. Then there is another side that remains hidden beneath the surface. It contains fears that were never spoken, emotions that were never expressed, talents that were never trusted, and dreams that were quietly abandoned because they felt too risky or unrealistic. Most people believe that hiding these parts protects them. They convince themselves that if they ignore old wounds, painful memories, or uncomfortable emotions, those things will simply disappear. But what is pushed into the darkness does not vanish. It waits. It grows. And eventually, it begins influencing your decisions without your awareness. Have you ever reacted far more strongly than a situation seemed to deserve? Have you ever sabotaged an opportunity you had worked so hard to create? Have you ever found yourself repeating the same painful patterns with different people, wondering why life keeps teaching the same lesson? These moments are rarely random. Often, they are signals from the hidden parts of your mind, asking to be acknowledged. The challenge is that facing these hidden parts feels uncomfortable. It is much easier to blame circumstances than to examine ourselves. It feels safer to believe that other people are the source of every disappointment than to ask whether there is something within us still waiting to heal. But genuine growth demands courage, not the courage to fight the world. The courage to meet yourself honestly. This is why so many people remain stuck, even when their external lives improve. They change cities, careers, relationships, or routines, yet they continue carrying the same emotional patterns wherever they go. The scenery changes, but the inner story remains untouched. Real freedom begins the moment you stop running from your own reflection. That reflection may reveal insecurity where you expected confidence. It may reveal grief hidden beneath constant busyness. It may reveal anger disguised as perfectionism, or fear disguised as endless preparation. These discoveries can feel unsettling because they challenge the identity you have carefully constructed over many years. Yet they also reveal something far more important. They reveal where your greatest strength has been waiting. The qualities you admire most in others often exist as untapped potential within yourself. The compassion you seek, the confidence you envy, the creativity you wish you possessed. These qualities do not appear from nowhere. They emerge when the barriers hiding them begin to dissolve. This process is rarely dramatic. It happens in quiet moments. It happens when you admit that you are tired of pretending. It happens when you allow yourself to feel emotions you once buried. It happens when you stop demanding perfection from yourself and begin choosing honesty instead. There is incredible power in saying, "This fear exists within me." Not because fear defines you, but because what you acknowledge no longer controls you from the shadows. Many people believe strength means never feeling doubt. In reality, strength is the willingness to continue walking even while doubt exists. Confidence is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that fear will no longer decide your future. Notice how life often places you in situations that expose exactly what you have been trying to avoid. If rejection terrifies you, life presents moments where vulnerability becomes necessary. If control has become your comfort, uncertainty enters your path. If you have spent years seeking approval, circumstances eventually force you to ask whose acceptance truly matters. At first, these experiences seem unfair. Later, they reveal themselves as invitations. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to reclaim a part of yourself that was left behind. Think about the person you were before the world taught you who you should be. Before expectations became heavier than curiosity. Before criticism became louder than your own inner voice. That original spark has never disappeared. It has only been buried beneath years of adaptation, survival, and self-protection. The remarkable truth is that your deepest self has been patiently waiting, not with judgment, but with quiet persistence. Every feeling of restlessness, every sense that something is missing, every moment when success still feels incomplete is pointing toward the same realization. You cannot become whole by abandoning parts of yourself. Wholeness is not achieved by becoming someone new. It is achieved by remembering who you have always been beneath the masks you learned to wear. As you begin recognizing these hidden parts with compassion instead of resistance, something unexpected happens. The energy once spent hiding yourself becomes available for creating, growing, loving, and living with authenticity. You stop fighting an invisible battle inside your own mind. Your decisions become clearer because they are no longer driven by unconscious fears. Your relationships become deeper because you no longer need to perform to feel worthy. Even your setbacks begin to lose their power because they no longer define your identity. This is where lasting transformation quietly begins, not when the world finally changes, but when you stop hiding from the person who has been waiting within you all along. Once you stop hiding from yourself, something unexpected begins to happen. The life that once felt familiar may suddenly feel strangely unfamiliar. At first, this can be confusing. You look around and notice that your surroundings have not changed. The same home, the same work, the same people, the same routines. Yet something inside you no longer responds to them in the same way. What once gave you comfort now leaves you restless. What once excited you now feels empty. It is tempting to believe that something has gone wrong, but this feeling is often one of the clearest signs that an important inner transition has already begun. Most people expect transformation to feel inspiring from the very beginning. They imagine clarity, confidence, and endless motivation. But genuine change rarely arrives dressed in certainty. More often, it begins with the unsettling realization that the person you have been can no longer carry you into the life you are meant to live. This is one of the most misunderstood stages of growth. When your inner world begins to evolve, your old identity starts to loosen its grip. The beliefs that once guided your decisions no longer seem convincing. The habits that once defined your days begin to feel mechanical. Even the goals you worked tirelessly to achieve may suddenly lose their emotional pull. This does not mean those goals were mistakes. It simply means they belonged to an earlier version of you. There is a quiet grief that comes with outgrowing your former self. People rarely talk about it because it is difficult to explain. How do you describe missing a life that no longer fits you? How do you explain feeling disconnected from a version of yourself that once felt so certain? The answer is that growth asks you to release not only what hurts you, but also what once protected you. Think about a child learning to walk. Crawling once provided safety and independence. It was necessary for that stage of life. But there comes a moment when continuing to crawl becomes the very thing that limits future movement. Standing feels unstable. Walking feels uncertain. Falling becomes inevitable. Yet, no one would argue that the child should remain on the floor simply because it feels familiar. The same principle applies to your inner life. What once helped you survive may now prevent you from becoming who you are capable of being. Perhaps you learned to stay silent because speaking your truth once led to criticism. Perhaps you learned to please everyone because conflict felt dangerous. Perhaps you convinced yourself that expecting less from life would protect you from disappointment. These strategies may have served an important purpose once, but survival strategies are not meant to become lifelong identities. The difficulty is that the mind naturally clings to what it knows. Familiar discomfort often feels safer than unfamiliar possibility. Even when people long for change, they often resist it because change requires letting go of certainty before receiving clarity. This is why this stage feels so uncomfortable. You are standing between two versions of yourself. The old one no longer feels authentic. The new one has not fully emerged. It is like crossing a bridge in heavy fog. You can no longer return to the place you started because you have already walked too far. Yet, you cannot clearly see the destination ahead. All you can do is continue taking one careful step after another, trusting that the path will reveal itself as you move forward. Many people mistake this uncertainty for failure. They assume they have lost direction. In reality, they are losing an identity that has become too small for the person they are becoming. Notice how your conversations may begin to change during this season. Topics that once consumed your attention seem shallow. You become more interested in meaning than appearance, more interested in truth than approval, more interested in peace than constant achievement. Some relationships naturally deepen because they grow alongside you. Others quietly fade because they were built around a version of yourself that no longer exists. This can be painful. There is no denying that. Every transformation involves some form of loss, not because life is punishing you, but because growth creates space by asking you to release what no longer belongs in your future. The remarkable thing is that while one part of your life feels like it is ending, another part is already beginning beneath the surface. You may not see it immediately. You may not even believe it yet. But your inner world is reorganizing itself in ways your conscious mind cannot fully measure. The questions you are asking today are different from the questions you asked a year ago. Your standards are changing. Your values are shifting. Your understanding of success is becoming more personal and less dependent on the opinions of others. These are not small adjustments. They are signs that your foundation is being rebuilt. During this period, patience becomes one of your greatest strengths. Not passive patience that waits for life to happen, but active patience that continues growing even when visible results have not yet appeared. Just as roots deepen before branches expand, your inner life is strengthening before your outer circumstances fully reflect the change. Resist the urge to force immediate answers. Not every question is meant to be solved today. Some questions exist to transform the person asking them. Instead of fearing uncertainty, become curious about it. Ask yourself what this discomfort is trying to teach you. Ask yourself which habits no longer represent who you are becoming. Ask yourself whether the life you are trying to preserve is truly the life your deepest self desires. You may discover that what feels like confusion is actually freedom arriving in a form you did not expect, because once the old identity begins to dissolve, new possibilities that were previously invisible start to emerge. You begin making decisions with greater honesty. You stop chasing paths that impress others, but leave your soul empty. You recognize that fulfillment is not found in becoming more acceptable to the world, but in becoming more truthful with yourself. This season is not asking you to have every answer. It is asking you to trust that the person you are becoming is wiser than the person you are leaving behind, and that trust is where your new life quietly begins. As you begin trusting the person you are becoming, your attention naturally starts to notice things you once overlooked. The world itself does not suddenly become filled with more meaning. Instead, your awareness becomes sharper. You begin recognizing patterns that previously blended into the background of everyday life. Certain conversations stay with you long after they end. A dream lingers in your mind for days. The same idea appears through different people who have never met each other. A sentence from a stranger feels as though it was spoken directly to the question you have been carrying in silence. Many people dismiss these moments because they are searching for dramatic signs, while ignoring the quiet language through which the deeper mind often communicates. They expect thunder when, more often, transformation begins with a whisper. The most important messages are rarely loud enough to force your attention. They simply wait until you become still enough to hear them. Think about how often your intuition has tried to guide you before your logic could explain why. There have likely been moments when something inside urged you not to take a certain path, even though it looked perfect from the outside. There were times you felt unexpectedly drawn toward a person, a place, or an opportunity without being able to explain the reason. Only later, sometimes months or even years later, did you understand why that quiet feeling mattered. This inner guidance does not usually arrive as certainty. It comes as a gentle pull, a persistent feeling, or a recurring image that refuses to disappear. The rational mind often demands proof before taking action, but the deeper layers of your psyche frequently recognize truth long before evidence becomes visible. That is why dreams can feel so powerful. When the distractions of the day fall away, the mind begins speaking through symbols instead of ordinary language. A locked door may represent a fear you have not yet confronted. A journey through unfamiliar places may reflect the beginning of an inner transformation. Water may symbolize emotions you have been avoiding. Climbing a mountain may reveal your desire to rise beyond your current limitations. These symbols are not predictions of the future. They are reflections of your inner condition. They reveal what is unfolding within you, often before you are consciously aware of it. The same is true during your waking hours. Notice the themes that keep repeating. Perhaps different people keep encouraging you to trust yourself. Perhaps you repeatedly encounter stories about courage just when you are considering an important decision. Maybe you continue finding yourself in situations that challenge the very fear you have avoided for years. Life has a remarkable way of presenting the same lesson until it is fully understood. At first, this can feel frustrating. You may wonder why similar disappointments continue appearing in different forms, why the same emotional struggles seem to return, even after you believed you had moved beyond them. But repetition is not always punishment. Very often, it is an invitation. An invitation to notice what you missed the first time. An invitation to respond differently than before. An invitation to become the person capable of breaking a cycle instead of repeating it. This is why awareness matters so deeply. Without awareness, patterns become prisons. With awareness, those same patterns become teachers. Imagine reading only one page of a book over and over again. Eventually, you might believe that page is the entire story. But the moment you turn the page, you realize there was always something greater waiting beyond it. Many people remain trapped because they never pause long enough to ask what their repeated experiences are trying to reveal. Instead of asking, "Why does this keep happening to me?" a more powerful question is, "What is this trying to teach me about myself?" That single shift changes everything. It moves you from helplessness to curiosity, from resistance to understanding, from reacting unconsciously to responding with intention. You may also notice that your intuition becomes stronger as you become more honest with yourself. The more you stop pretending, the easier it becomes to recognize what truly aligns with your inner values. Decisions that once felt impossible begin to feel surprisingly simple. Not because every option is easy, but because your inner compass has become clearer. The challenge is that modern life constantly encourages distraction. Endless noise competes for your attention. Opinions from others become louder than your own inner voice. Busyness creates the illusion of progress, while quietly separating you from the wisdom already within you. That is why silence becomes so valuable. Not empty silence, but intentional stillness. Moments when you are no longer consuming information, but observing your own thoughts. Moments when you allow your emotions to speak without immediately trying to silence them. Moments when you stop searching outside yourself long enough to hear what has been waiting within. It is often during these quiet spaces that the pieces begin fitting together. A memory suddenly makes sense. A painful experience reveals the strength it was building. A decision becomes obvious without anyone else convincing you. The answers feel less like new discoveries and more like truths you somehow always knew but had forgotten beneath the noise. As this awareness grows, you begin living differently. You become less impulsive because you are no longer driven by every passing emotion. You become less fearful because you understand that uncertainty is not always a threat. You become less dependent on constant reassurance because your confidence is rooted in self-knowledge rather than approval. Slowly, almost without noticing, your relationship with life changes. You stop demanding that every event make immediate sense. You begin trusting that meaning often reveals itself with time. You realize that not every closed door is a rejection, not every delay is a failure, and not every unexpected turn is a mistake. Some experiences arrive to challenge you, some arrive to awaken you, and some arrive to remind you that the deepest guidance has been speaking to you all along. You only needed to become quiet enough to recognize its voice. Once you begin recognizing the quiet guidance within you, another realization slowly emerges. The greatest turning points in life rarely arrive with dramatic announcements. They do not always come with applause, perfect timing, or complete certainty. More often, they begin with a single decision that almost no one else can see. It is the decision to stop living according to fear and begin living according to truth. Many people spend years waiting for life to change before they allow themselves to become different. They believe confidence must come before action, clarity must come before commitment, and certainty must come before transformation. But life has a different rhythm. It often asks you to become the person first, long before the results appear. This is why so many remain trapped in cycles they desperately want to escape. They keep asking, "What if I fail?" while never asking the more important question, "What if I never allow myself to become who I truly am?" The answer to that question carries a quiet weight, because the greatest loss in life is not always losing an opportunity. Sometimes it is spending years becoming someone you were never meant to be. From an early age, many people begin collecting expectations that do not belong to them. They are told who they should admire, what success should look like, what dreams are practical, what emotions are acceptable, and what parts of themselves should remain hidden. Little by little, they build a life designed to satisfy the voices around them, while slowly forgetting the voice within. At first, this seems harmless. Approval feels rewarding. Acceptance feels safe. Following familiar paths feels responsible. But over time, something begins to feel strangely incomplete. You may achieve goals that once seemed impossible, only to discover that fulfillment never arrived with them. You may receive praise, yet still feel unseen. You may continue climbing higher, while quietly wondering why every achievement feels temporary. This happens because success without authenticity creates an emptiness that no accomplishment can fill. There is a difference between building a successful life and building a meaningful one. A successful life may impress others. A meaningful life allows you to recognize yourself when you look in the mirror. The distance between those two lives is often measured by one decision. Whether you are willing to stop pretending. Pretending is exhausting. Pretending that you are unaffected when you are hurting. Pretending that your dreams no longer matter because they seem difficult. Pretending that your intuition is wrong because it disagrees with popular opinion. Pretending that comfort is enough when your soul quietly longs for growth. Every day spent pretending asks you to trade a little more of your authenticity for temporary security. At first, the cost seems small. Eventually, it becomes impossible to ignore. This is why the most important decision you will ever make is not choosing the perfect career, the perfect relationship, or the perfect plan. It is choosing honesty over illusion. Honesty begins with simple questions. What do I truly value when no one is watching? What kind of person do I want to become if approval disappears? Which parts of my life reflect my deepest convictions? And which parts exist only because I was afraid to disappoint someone else? These questions rarely produce immediate answers. They produce something more valuable. They create alignment. Alignment is powerful because it removes the constant conflict between your inner truth and your outward actions. Instead of dividing your energy between who you are and who you believe you must appear to be, you begin moving in one direction. Life becomes simpler, not easier, but clearer. Decisions become less confusing because they are guided by principles instead of pressure. You stop comparing your timeline with everyone else's because you realize that your purpose cannot be measured against another person's path. You begin trusting that living honestly may cost you certain opportunities, but it will never cost you yourself. There will still be moments of fear. Do not expect courage to erase uncertainty. Courage simply changes your relationship with it. Instead of asking fear for permission, you begin acknowledging its presence without allowing it to lead. That is where freedom quietly begins. Think about every meaningful change in your life. There was probably a moment before it happened when nothing around you suggested success was guaranteed. You moved anyway. You spoke when silence felt easier. You stepped forward before every answer was available. Looking back, those decisions seem obvious because you know how the story unfolded. But in the moment, they required trust. Not trust that everything would be easy. Trust that remaining unchanged would cost more than moving forward. This is the hidden power of authenticity. Every honest decision strengthens the next one. Every time you choose truth over fear, your confidence grows. Not because life becomes predictable, but because you discover that you can face uncertainty without abandoning yourself. Over time, people begin noticing something different about you. They may not be able to explain it. Your words carry more conviction. Your presence becomes calmer. Your choices appear more intentional. The change they notice is not the result of learning how to impress others. It is the result of no longer being at war with yourself. That inner conflict once consumed enormous energy. It forced you to seek validation, chase perfection, and question every instinct. But once your actions begin reflecting your deepest values, that struggle slowly fades. You become less interested in proving your worth because you are no longer doubting it. This is when your life begins moving with a quiet sense of purpose. Not because every obstacle disappears, but because your direction is no longer determined by fear. It is determined by the person you have finally chosen to become. And the moment you choose your authentic self over the comfort of a false identity, your future begins changing in ways your old self could never have imagined. Now you can begin to see that nothing we have explored stands alone. Every moment of uncertainty, every hidden fear you confronted, every uncomfortable transition, every quiet sign you learned to notice, and every honest decision you chose to make has been leading toward one realization. The change you have been waiting for was never only about changing your circumstances. It was about changing your relationship with yourself. There is something remarkable that happens when you look back at your life with new awareness. Events that once seemed disconnected begin to fit together like pieces of a larger picture. The disappointment that once felt meaningless taught you resilience. The rejection that broke your confidence redirected you toward a path that reflected your true values. The delay you once resented gave you time to become the person capable of handling the opportunities that would eventually arrive. What once looked like chaos begins to reveal an unexpected order. This is why perspective is so powerful. In the middle of a difficult season, you naturally focus on what is missing. You ask why life feels unfair. You question whether your efforts matter. You wonder if you have fallen behind while everyone else seems to be moving ahead. But time has a unique way of answering questions that patience alone cannot. Months from now, you may look back on this very season and realize it was the point where everything quietly began to change. Not because something extraordinary happened overnight, but because your understanding shifted. The person who entered this season is not the same person who will leave it. Many people spend their entire lives chasing a future version of happiness without recognizing that every meaningful transformation begins in the present moment. They tell themselves they will become confident after success arrives. They will become peaceful after life becomes easier. They will become authentic after receiving approval from others. Yet peace does not wait at the finish line. It begins the moment you stop postponing your own growth. This is the quiet truth that many overlook. Life is not simply happening to you. It is also revealing you. Every challenge reveals what you believe about yourself. Every relationship reveals how you give and receive love. Every setback reveals where fear still influences your decisions. Every opportunity reveals whether you are willing to trust your own potential. Nothing is wasted when you choose to learn from it. Even your mistakes carry hidden value. Think about the moments you regret most. Perhaps they taught you humility. Perhaps they taught you compassion for people struggling in ways you could never have understood before. Perhaps they forced you to release an identity that was limiting your future. Without those experiences, you might still be chasing a life that looked impressive on the outside, while leaving you empty within. Growth has an unusual way of disguising itself. While you are living through it, it often feels like uncertainty. Only afterward do you recognize it as preparation. That is why comparison becomes such a dangerous habit. When you compare your journey with someone else's, you only see visible outcomes. You do not see the invisible lessons, private struggles, silent sacrifices, or inner transformations that shaped them. Your path was never meant to be identical to anyone else's. The timing of your life belongs to your life. There is wisdom in that. Imagine if every flower bloomed on the same day. The beauty of a garden comes from its diversity of seasons. Some blossoms appear early, others emerge much later. Yet each fulfills its purpose at the right time. The same is true for you. The years you believed were empty may have been strengthening qualities that could not have developed any other way. Patience, resilience, discernment, empathy, courage. These are not gifts usually formed during comfort. They are shaped quietly through seasons that initially appear unremarkable or even painful. Now consider the person you were before this journey began. That version of you searched constantly for certainty, needed answers before taking action, looked outside for permission, measured worth through comparison, feared uncertainty because it seemed like a sign of failure. Compare that person to who you are becoming now. Someone who understands that uncertainty can be a doorway instead of a dead end. Someone who recognizes that hidden fears lose their power once they are faced honestly. Someone who sees setbacks as teachers rather than permanent definitions. Someone who trusts inner truth more than external approval. That transformation is not imaginary. It is real, and it is already happening. Perhaps no one around you fully notices it yet. That does not make it any less significant. The strongest foundations are built beneath the surface, long before anyone admires the structure standing above them. Continue honoring that unseen work. Continue choosing honesty when pretending feels easier. Continue listening to the quiet wisdom within, instead of the loud expectations around you. Continue walking forward even when the destination remains partially hidden, because every sincere step changes the person taking it. One day, someone may ask you when your life finally changed. They may expect you to name a promotion, a relationship, a breakthrough, or a remarkable achievement. But you will know the deeper truth. Your life changed the moment you stopped waiting for the world to transform you and accepted the responsibility of transforming yourself. And perhaps that moment is this one. Or taking action, looked outside for permission, measured worth through comparison, feared uncertainty because it seemed like a sign of failure. Compare that person to who you are becoming now. Someone who understands that uncertainty can be a doorway instead of a dead end. Someone who recognizes that hidden fears lose their power once they are faced honestly. Someone who sees setbacks as teachers rather than permanent definitions. Someone who trusts inner truth more than external approval. That transformation is not imaginary. It is real, and it is already happening. Perhaps no one around you fully notices it yet. That does not make it any less significant. The strongest foundations are built beneath the surface,